Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the college football version of ProLine. We're going to take a look at the 2016 Big Ten season. We're going to look at starters returning. We got revenge games. We got spread trends because we're doing this from a Las Vegas betting perspective. I'm John Cranton, joined by Jeff Sod. He's been running Las Vegas Sports Services for how many centuries have been doing this, Jeff?
17 years.
17 years.
Yes.
Just an exceptional handicapper, the way he analyzes games. You can find his picks at jimfeist.com. And if you want to get free picks each day sent right to your cell phone, right from Jim Feist, just text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. Or you can go to jimwins.com or check out jimfeist.com. All right, let's get into the Big Ten for 2016. Ohio State has really been the powerhouse team, 42-4 start under Urban Meyer, national champs 2 years ago. But in their division, the Big Ten East, they were 7-1 with Michigan State, but Michigan State topped them at Columbus last year in a thrilling game. And Michigan finished 6-2. They had a bit of a resurrection. Meanwhile, in the West, you had Iowa at 8-0 and then losing to Michigan State in another thrilling game. So it was a great season for the Big Ten. Might as well start off with the Buckeyes, Jeff, for 2016, because a year ago at this time, Ohio State really had everything going for them. They were defending national champs. They were number one. They had three quarterbacks. They weren't sure who was going to start. And then when they played, they were an uneven team. They were kind of tentative. And then when they lost that late season game to the Spartans, several of the players said, you know, we've been playing tight with these expectations, the weight of expectations on us all year. And then after that, they actually went out and played pretty well. So how do you see the Buckeyes for 2016?
Yeah, the Michigan State game probably ended up to be a good thing for them because they realized that not only playing tight, but they were playing conservative. And next week they blew out Michigan, and then and now things. This year we don't have a quarterback controversy. Last year they had too many quarterbacks. This year it's going to be J.T. Barrett. Even though in the spring game wasn't too impressive, he threw 2 interceptions, and actually freshman Joe Burrow had a better game, 3 TDs, 196 yards. But J.T. Barrett's going to be the quarterback. Last year 11 TDs, 4 interceptions, and 63% completion rate on his passes. Ohio State only returns 3 on offense, 3 on defense. They have junior running back Curtis Samuel. He averaged 7.8 yards per carry last year, but only 2 offensive linemen are back. They lost the top receivers too. Defense, only 3 starters returned from this season. Defensive end Taquan Lewis, middle linebacker Raekwon McMillan, and quarterback Gary and Conley. But with Urban Meyer and Ohio State, they always have plenty of talent. They always, they always have one of the best recruiting classes in the country. So. It's hard to say that Ohio State would have a down year. It's a rebuilding year, but a rebuilding year for the Buckeyes is a lot different than a rebuilding year for most teams. They're on a 27-15 run over the total. On the road under Urban Meyer, they're 13-1 straight up, 10-4 against the spread. They open with Bowling Green and Tulsa, but they have a big game at Oklahoma September 17, which would be a really big test for them. They're at Wisconsin, at Penn State, at Michigan State, and that's going to be a big revenge game on November 19th against Michigan State. And so. What can you say? Ohio State will probably still win, 10 games or so. They're not instant national title contenders like they have been the last couple of years, but they should, with all the talent they have there, even with all these starters they've lost, they still should win 9 or 10 games, John.
Yeah, and if you like to play totals, they're on a 27-15 run over the total. And on the road under Urban Meyer, they've been sensational. Run a 13-1 straight up, 10-4 against the spread. All right, let's take a look at the Michigan State Spartans, the amazing Spartans under Mike D'Antonio, who beat those Buckeyes a year ago. He's off another terrific season, 12-4 straight up. They didn't cover betting numbers. That's about the only flaw with them, 5-9 spread run. However, going back several years, they're still on a 23-17-1 spread run, so they're winning games and covering games. Now for 2016, the Spartans have 4 back on offense and 6 on defense, so they have lost some players on offense. This offense was balanced, which it has been the last few years, 32.2 points per game. They had 160.7 yards rushing and 236 passing per game. But you have a new quarterback now for 2016. It's going to be the senior Tyler O'Connor. Yes, he's a senior, but he really hasn't played a heck of a lot. 2 touchdowns and 1 interception last season with 133 yards and just 54% completions. But offensively, you're going to have some growing pains because they also lost some key skill position talent. The one guy they didn't lose, though, is that outstanding running back in L.J. Scott. Boy, was he dynamic as a freshman, particularly down the stretch when they went to him. Ended up with 4.8 yards per carry, 699, but you have him back solid in the backfield along with junior running back Gerald Holmes. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry, chipped in 540 yards. And they do have wide receiver R.J. Shelton. He's a senior, 503 yards, and a 6'4" senior tight end Josiah Price, just 267 yards. But so there is some experience. But boy, it's really going to come down to quarterback play. So I expect them to have a balanced offense again, because the offense really doesn't have to carry the load. This defense is just so good. They were 19th in the country last year, giving up 20.5 points per game, and they should be very good, because you can start with the senior linebacker, Riley Bullough. He's back, and junior nose tackle, Malik McDowell. These two guys are really all-American type of players up front. And the secondary, too, is really loaded with talent and experience. You have a pair of senior cornerbacks, Demetrius Cox and Darian Hicks. And the safety position, too, is very strong with Monte Nicholson. He's a junior. And sophomore Grayson Miller saw some time. So this defense, once again, is going to be outstanding. The schedule for the Spartans, big one early, September 17th at Notre Dame. Some road games at Indiana, at Maryland, at Penn State, and Illinois. Really aren't that bad for road. And then at home, they get Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio State. So the schedule's kind of favorable this year. Now, the Spartans haven't been covering games at home. You look at their last 76 games, 32-44 against the spread. So they have been overvalued at home. But as we saw on the road when they went to Ohio State as a big dog with quarterback injuries, they won that game straight up, led by that defense. So they've been exceptionally good on the road. And with that conservative offense, balanced offense, and great defense, it's no surprise that they're a team that I think to look at under the total. They're on an 8-4 run under the total coming into this year, and I expect that to continue. All right, Jeff, Michigan Wolverines struck gold with Jim Harbaugh last season. Is the sky the limit for the Wolverines?
Well, and I know other coaches are tired of hearing about him, because he keeps making these news. He went down to Florida for not spring break, but for the same thing. He took his team down there, and then they passed a rule against it, and so now he's in New Jersey doing a commencement speech, and people think that everywhere he goes he's trying to secretly recruit people, but
he's a salesman.
He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's making he's making news, and he's improving the team. Last year they were 54th, and they averaged 31 points a game. They're 55th in passing, 93rd in rushing. All those stats will improve this year. They returned 9 on offense, 6 on defense. Quarterback situation is still unsettled. John O'Corn transferred from Houston. He was the American Athletic Conference Freshman of the Year in 2013. Wilson Spade, who was the hero last year in that Minnesota game when he took over, he was in the mix, and so was Shane Morris, who sat out last year and has 2 years left of eligibility. So the quarterback situation has to be straightened out. They have the best receivers in the conference. They have J.U. Chesson and senior tight end Jake Butt, and also wide receiver, the senior Amaro Darbo. And they have 4 offensive line starters returning. So everything looks good on offense, and as long as you get that quarterback situation straightened out. Defense, they have a complete new set of linebackers. That might be one problem, but the line and the secondary looks good. That defensive line, last year they had those 3 shutouts against BYU, Maryland, Northwestern. The schedule, they have the first 5 games at home: Hawaii, Central Florida, and Colorado, and then Penn State, Wisconsin, the Big Ten. So the schedule is very favorable for them this year. They only play 4 road games altogether. They're 20 and 29 against the spread, the last 49 road games, but that was with several different coaches, so that might not be a factor. But Michigan definitely, I would say, the favorite in the East Division of the Big Ten, and things are looking good there. We're seeing go. I would say they can win 10, 11 games this year again.
All right, and if you like to keep in mind for spread trends from Michigan, on the road, just 20 and 29 against the spread run. I'm going to take a look at the Maryland Terrapins. Let's call them the new look Maryland, because they're off a train wreck season of 3-9, only 1 win in the Big Ten. They were 7-5 against the spread, but it's an offense that has some 7 starters back and 5 on defense. However, they got a new coach here in DJ Durkin. This guy comes over from the team you just talked about, Michigan Wolverines. He was with them last year as a defensive coordinator, and he was also at the Florida Gators in 2013 and 14. His reputation is that he's a very good recruiter. So at this point, it looks like they hired a guy who can bring in some talent. The offense for the Terrapins, they averaged 28 points per game, which is, marginal, but they weren't as good as that sounds. That ranked 74th in the country, and it was all one-dimensional. They were 33rd in the country in rushing, just over 200 yards per game. Passing offense wasn't very good, ranked 109th, and they were the worst team as far as turnovers in all of college football, 36 turnovers overall, so that was just a catastrophe for this offense. They do bring back 2 of the quarterbacks who were the starters last year, but these guys were turnover machines. Senior Perry Hills had 8 touchdowns, 13 picks, and Calabro is back. He had 6 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Hills is more of a runner. But because they were so bad with turnovers. Wouldn't be surprised to see the freshman Terrell Pigram step up here. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Alabama, and they have a new offensive coordinator in Walt Bell. This guy comes over from Arkansas State. The Arkansas State team was 14th in the country in yards. They run a spread offense, and this new kid, the freshman Pigram, is actually a better suit for running spread offenses, so wouldn't be surprised to see them throw the freshman there right away, although they do have two backups with experience. The defense for the Terrapins, only 5 starters back, and they were just abysmal. 34.3 points per game last year. That was 103rd in the country. They were terrible in Big Ten play, giving up 421 yards per game. That ranked 11th in the conference. And worse yet, they had 2 pretty good guys up front. They lost both of those who left early for the NFL. So there's a lot of rebuilding to do for the new defensive coordinator in Scott Schaefer. This guy was at Syracuse, did a pretty good job with the defenses there. And while the line and the linebackers are a major question mark right now, look like to be a weak spot, the secondary is kind of an unusual mixed bag. You're only 1 starter back, but the 1 starter is outstanding. He is Will Likely, and he was one of the best players in the Big Ten. He's also a punt return man. So they do have 1 star that they can build around in the secondary, but they need a lot of help up front. And when you look at the schedule for Maryland, road games at Indiana, at Penn State, at Michigan, and Nebraska, very difficult. The new coaching staff, it looks like they have added some talented young players early on, but they're going to need a lot to build depth as well as talent. I can't see a winning record just yet. Maybe 5-7 would be the record, but if you like to play totals, got to believe this offense, the new spread attack, is going to be better and more efficient. They can't possibly have any more turnovers than they did a year ago, but I still see defensive weaknesses. Maryland last year was 8-4 over the total. That's part of a 15-10 run over the total, and I see that continuing. Good team to look at over. All right, Penn State, Jeff. This is a team that has had great defense the last couple of years, but a lousy offense last year. Any changes with the Lions?
Well, the big change is they have a new offensive coordinator, Joe Moorhead, who has historically used a more up-tempo offense, and that showed already in the spring game. The Blue beat the White 37-0, and the offense was much faster than it has been the last few years. Last few years, the Penn State offense has been kind of boring and mediocre, and it just hasn't been good. Hasn't been good to watch. McSorley, the quarterback Tracy McSorley, threw for 281 yards in the spring game. He was 23 out of 27. So hopefully that'll be for Penn State. That'll be a big improvement this year on offense. Last year they 104th in the country in points, 23.7 points per game. They were 82nd in passing, 106 in rushing. So they can't get much worse than that. James Franklin, last year they're 2-5. He's the coach, 2-5 straight up, 1-6 against the spread, 0-6 against top 25 teams. This is not. It hasn't happened yet for James Franklin. It's one of those coaches that has a great success at one school, goes to a new school, and it hasn't quite happened yet. But they're going to give him a couple more years, and we'll see what happens. All 5 offensive linemen are back. Penn State's had a 26-20 run over the total, even with that offense, but that's mostly caused by these low posted totals in the first place. Receivers, Deshaun Hamilton and Chris Godwin are back. They're already first-team All-Big Ten selections. The defense was 30th in the nation last year. That was actually worse than the year before when they were 7th. They have a new defensive coordinator in Brent Pry, who was the linebackers coach before that. The starting linebackers are all experienced, or as usual, Penn State has a good core of linebackers. The schedule, they were at Pittsburgh, at Michigan, at Purdue, at Indiana. They got Ohio State, Michigan State at home. It's going to be a big revenge game with Michigan State because they were blown out, embarrassed, 55-14 last year against the Spartans. So we'll see what happens with this new offense. I think it can't be a bad thing. So Penn State will probably. I would say they go off with 8. Let's go with 8 wins for Penn State.
All right, you mentioned that over the total run, which goes back several years. Keep in mind, last year they were 7-5 under the total, and it sounds like that might be a prediction for this year too, with maybe a ball control offense that's below average, but a much better defense as they rank 7th and 30th in the nation in points in each of the last 2 years. I'm going to take a look at Indiana Hoosiers because last year I thought this was going to be a surprise team in college football. I really thought it was going to be a bust-out year. Kind of a mixed bag. They had a losing record overall, 6-7. On the other hand, they did make it to a bowl game, and if you watch that game against Ohio State, they had the ball with 21-point underdog. They had it 1st and goal at the 10 and had a chance to tie up the Buckeyes, but couldn't do it as the Ohio State came up with a goal line stand. So you're looking at a team that looks pretty good on offense for Kevin Wilson, who's beginning his 6th season. Indiana has 6 starters back on offense, 7 on defense, and it was their first bowl game last year since 2007. and they lost to Duke in a shootout 44-41, and that really sums up what Indiana's all about. They're tremendous on offense, but they have huge defensive problems. The offense last year was just electric, 36.2 points per game. That was 24th in the country. They were on a no-huddle spread attack, 24th in the nation in passing, and they were 30th in rushing. Both of those with over 204 yards per game. And they should be very good, too, because they do have a new quarterback in Richard Legault. He's a senior, 6'6" senior JC transfer. He started at UConn. He's been to Oklahoma State. And most recently, he was at Cisco Community College, and he was pretty good, 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and he is a senior, so he's got a lot of playing time and experience in college football. They also have a backup quarterback and sophomore Xander Diamont. This guy is athletic, mobile quarterback, did see a little bit of time last year with 166 yards. And then there's the backfield. There aren't many teams in the nation that have a pair of 1,000 yards rushers last year, but this Indiana team was one of them. Now, Jordan Howard, he left early for the NFL, but they got junior running back Divine Redding back. He had just over 1,000 yards rushing, 4.5 yards per carry. The offensive line should be pretty good. You got Dan Feeney at guard. This guy was an all Big Ten offensive performer on the first team, and he chose to come back as a senior, so that's a big plus. Absolutely loaded at wide receiver, the Hoosiers are. 6'4" junior Simi Cobbs. He had over 1,000 yards, 17.3 yards per catch. A terrific talent, and he's not alone. You got a senior wide receiver in Ricky Jones, 906 yards, and a small, quick senior in Mitchell Page. He had 684. All these guys are back. So the new quarterback is going to have a lot of weapons to go to. I think this is going to be another top 30 offense here in the country. It's the defense that is just horrendous. They gave up 44 points to Duke in that bowl game for the year. They gave up 37.1 points per game, 116th in the nation. So they have a new coordinator. Tom Allen is aboard. This guy was at South Florida, and he used the 4-2-5 defensive scheme there. He was also at Ole Miss in the SEC. The linebacker core is the strength for this Indiana defense. Marcus Oliver leads a solid core, and they do lose 3 defensive line starters, however, so the linebackers are the strength. And they struggle badly. They were 13th of the Big Ten against the run, 195.7 yards rushing per game. And the secondary was just as bad, giving up 313.8 yards per game and 32 passing touchdowns, so they couldn't stop the run or the pass. They'll still have a lot of work to do. And the secondary doesn't look that good. They got young cornerbacks in Rashad Fant and Andre Brown. But, boy, you can't stop the run. That's going to be a major concern again. They're going to give up some points. The schedule for Indiana actually starts really favorable. This team could be 3-0. You got Florida International, Ball State, and Wake Forest, so they're well on their way to a bowl game with that early part of the schedule. But after that, good night. Michigan State and Ohio State back-to-back. And this is a team that, with their bad defense and very talented, speedy offense, yes, I will look for them to go over the total again. They have a 27-11 run over the total, including a sizzling 12-2 over the total last year. It's almost like the Vegas odds makers can't make a total anyway high enough for these guys, but they're going to be very similar this fall. And they got a shot at a bowl, too, with that probably a 3-0 start. All right, the word R is for rebuilding and retooling. It's also for Rutgers, so what's in store for the Scarlet Knights, Jeff?
Those two words define Rutgers. They were 4-8 last year, straight up, 1-7 in the Big Ten, 4-8 against the spread. New coach Chris Ash comes over from Ohio State, defensive coordinator there, and they just need this program's been down for the last few years now. They need something. Hopefully, for them, Ash is the answer. They're shifting from a pro style to a power spread, and last year they were 80th in the country on offense, 27.3 points per game. They were 87th at passing, 66 in rushing. 6'5" junior quarterback Chris Laviato will be the starting quarterback probably. He hasn't looked that good in the spring, but he's still the leading candidate for the starting quarterback job. There were 16 TDs last year. He completed 61% of his passes. Also, they have a junior quarterback Hidden Reddy in the mix. 4 offensive line starters are back, with also running backs Robert Martin, who averaged 5.0 yards per carry, and Josh Hicks, who averaged 6.4 yards per carry. And they have some good receivers coming back, Andre Patton and Carlton Agudosi. Defense last year, they were 104th in the country, 34.9 points allowed. They ranked 13th in the Big Ten in total defense, 12th in scoring. They were 12th in run defense, and they gave up 33 rushing touchdowns. So they can't get much worse than that this year. The return of Darius Hamilton is going to help too. He was out last year with a knee injury. Linebackers are young, and with Deontay Roberts, Isaiah Johnson, and T.J. Taylor. The back 7 needs work. Rutgers was number 12 in the Big Ten last year in pass defense, and they were last in pass pass efficiency defense. So a lot of work to be done here for this team. Schedule, they open at Washington, then they're home versus Iowa. They're at Ohio State, Minnesota, and Michigan State. They host Indiana on November 5th. Remember last year that game ended up Rutgers winning 55-52. The total went over by 41 points. So it looks like another rough season for Rutgers. They won 4 games last year. I'll give them 5 wins this year, John.
All right, before we get to the Big Ten West Division, make sure you go to jimfeist.com. Jim has his Fast Facts. It's at the top right-hand corner of the page. You can see it there. It's a drop-down menu. Gives you personal access to Jim's database. He's got free stats on college football, NFL, and during basketball season, college basketball, and the NBA. You get 2 days worth of stats, and it's all free. Make sure you check it out. Plus, if you want to get free plays sent daily to your cell phone, you can just text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827. Get those daily, or you can go to jimwins.com.